Hi everyone, in today's video I'm going to do a quick guide on God of Sleep Hypnos that has just been added to the game. As usual, I'll be going through his skill, his clothes, his constellation, and also finishing off with some lineups on how to clear his trial stages. Now I'm going to do all of the skills today from right to left in reverse order, so starting off with his skill 4, so this is a trigger skill, and basically what does is it triggers whenever he's getting hit, and it's going to do two things. One, it's going to allow him to do a counterattack. Two is going to reduce a target's attacking speed by 10%. And this can be stacked up to 10 times and lasts until the end of the battle. So this is a very, very strong trigger skill. Now, the first part, the counterattack, you can almost think that same as Taurus Aldebaran or Poseidon's bounce, right? It's kind of the enemy also do take damage when they hit you. It is slightly weaker version because the damage you deal is equal to your own attack rather than the enemy's attack. However, this lasts for the whole battle. So in terms of duration wise, it's a lot longer than Poseidon and also Taurus Alberon. So does have its edge there. Now, the other effect, however, is probably the more important one, which is reduce the enemy's attacking speed. Now, this is going to significantly slow down the pace of the battle. And because of how strong this trigger skill is, generally you probably want to play Hypnos up front, just so that he get hit by a lot of enemy's normal attack early on, and therefore you kind of slow all of the enemy or multiple enemies down at once very early on. Now, he is not a tank, right? He's a support unit. So he has a bit of bulk, but not the most defensive oriented knight of all time. So you definitely want to have some other ways to potentially, help him to survive long enough. So maybe play another knight in your team, such as Sequel's Bayern. He's gonna make the other front row ally give him like shields, etc. So yeah, this is probably what I would say is just be aware that if you do place him up front, you probably need some other knights to back him up. All right, now we move on to his second skill. This is an opening skill, which basically reduces all of the enemy's attacking speed and also Cosmo recovery speed to 0. Now, this would gradually disappear within 7 seconds. So, in the first 1 second, they will have attacking speed and Cosmo of 0. But then in 1 second later, it may be only, 12%, no, 14% of attacking speed and whatever, however many Cosmo, etc. And it gradually get higher. Now, this is a very similar opening skill to, I guess, Athena and Moses, which kind of do static damage reduction. The only difference here is that this reduces their attacking speed and Cosmo. What that basically means is attacking speed affects how quickly you do your normal attack, and Cosmo affects obviously your ultimate. However, this wouldn't be able to protect you against any looping skills, etc. So just be aware of that. So even though you won't take too much damage from ultimates or normal attacks within those 7 seconds, you will still be affected by the enemy's looping skill. So I guess that's the main distinction I will make here. The other way of thinking about this is actually it's almost like a reverse order of what Sirius is doing, because Sirius gives your whole team starting Cosmo boost and allow you to release ultimates first. What this one does is reduce the enemy's Cosmo recovery speed and therefore still allow, even though it doesn't give you any Cosmo directly, it still allow you to release ultimate quicker because your Cosmo is going to charge out quicker than the enemies. So it also behaves kind of in a similar way of how you may want to use Sirius. All right, now next we have a looping skill, and this basically allow him to protect the ally with the lowest HP. What's gonna do is it's gonna make that ally go into a sleep state, and within that state, it's gonna do multiple things. One, it's gonna restore HP and Cosmo to that ally, which is actually great. And two, it's also gonna give them up to 8 layers of shield to protect them. But also, the sleep state will end early if all of those shields have been used up, etc. Now, 8 shields is actually a lot, so vast majority of the time, I think, maybe they would end the sleep early, but definitely not within the first few seconds, unless, for whatever reason, the enemy just happened to be releasing loads of ultimates or skills all at once. But vast majority of the time, I do think this is a really strong protection skill, and it almost basically means that your ally is going to come out of that sleep state with full HP and also potentially full Cosmo as well, which is absolutely amazing. However, there's one thing I don't really like about this, and I think it's more of a double-edged sword in some sense, is that normally it's very likely your ally with the lowest HP is going to be your DPS, right? Because they tend to towards most fragile and take more damage, etc. And normally DPS you want them to release skills quite often so that you will be able to dish out massive amount of damage. And if you just happen to release put them into sleep, that basically could mean, for example, my DPS had already taken lots of hit. It got its Cosmo charged up, just about to release his ultimate. Hypnos comes in, put that guy into sleep, and I'm not able to release my ultimate anymore. So it can work in that way as well, and just completely backfire. So just be slightly wary of this when you play Hypnos. I do think the skill can be a bit of a double-edged sword in sometimes, and potentially backfire. All right. Lastly, we're going to talk about his ultimate. His ultimate is really strong, and it's definitely his signature skill. Like all of his clothes, like all four levels of his clothes, basically enhance his ultimate, and that basically just shows how ridiculous his ultimate is. Like just do too many things all at once. Now, first of all, what it does is it release something which is called Dream Space, which is a space effect. Now, space effect is very similar to Evil Sega's dimension effect, right? Dimensional space. So very similar to that. However, it's different to, let's say, some of the field effect from, I can't remember, either Virgo Shroom or Aquarius Hugo. There are two different type of effect. One is like space effect, one is like field effect, which are slightly different. But anyway, so he's gonna put up this dream space, which lasts for 6 seconds. Within that time, it does multiple things. One, he himself is immune to any damage, but two, he also restores the HP of all of your allies. So this is what it does to your team. Now for the enemies cannot release any looping skill, so that's absolutely great. And also they are going to receive extra damage at the end, which is equal to 15% of the total damage that have been received during this stream period. So this is very strong. And also actually those numbers go much higher. Like if you look at the level 3 one, all the allies restore 70% of attack worth of HP, and the extra damage dealt to the enemies are 35%. So the numbers do get higher. And this is very good for a couple of reasons. One, it complements some of his other kit. So, for example, if you look at his looping skill, which is able to heal the ally with the lowest HP, this is a single target healing. However, what your ultimate is able to do is to do an AoE healing to your entire team. So that's really nice. The second thing it's able to do is that it reduces the enemies cannot activate any looping skill. So if you remember, I already said his opening attack is very good because it slows down the enemy's normal attack and also ultimate, but it doesn't affect looping skill. Now you also have a dimensional effect which do affect looping skill. So it just does really good complement tactics to each other. And also, it's just a really strong ultimate by itself because if you think about it, a lot of the ultimate right now in the game either do damage or do healing, right? So, for example, you have Misty who just heal with his um, ultimate, you have Athena who just heal with his ultimate, or you have some damage dealing characters which do damage. This one is actually able to do a bit of both, so that's quite nice by itself. But also, it gets ridiculously stronger with his clothes. So at the base level, it's gonna affect some damage and also restore some HP as soon as it lands. So remember, the ultimate normally is kind of like damage over time or heal over time, right? It restores a bit every single second. However, with level 1 of the clothes, you're able to do some damage and do some heal immediately as soon as you release it. So that's nice. Level 2 and level 3 is basically it's gonna keep track of all of the HP at the start of the dimensional space, and when it ends, if the enemy's HP is higher than what has been tracked down, then it will be returned to the tracked or marked HP. Whereas if your HP is lower, then it will be restoring back to the marked HP. So basically, this kind of applies a guarantee such that whenever you release the ultimate, you're actually gonna always end up better than before the ultimate. So that's also again very nice because sometimes what you see is that you do a massive ultimate, the enemy do a heal, and your ultimate basically seems to do nothing. Whereas this one almost able to do a bit of a guarantee to make sure at least you're doing something with your ultimate, which is nice. And then at the highest level, at level 30, what's gonna say is that whenever an enemy, so apart ignore the first 2 seconds, but from the I think the space is for 6 seconds in total. So ignore the first 2 seconds, but from the third second to the sixth second, whenever an enemy's HP is full or one of our ally has died, then they will be entering sleep. And during that sleep time, you are gonna be immune to any damage. So the making the enemy's full HP when go to sleep doesn't actually matter too much, but it does prevent your own ally from dying. I think that's the main takeaway here. So this is very good because you may think, okay, I'm just preventing him dying, but remember the space is also a heal over time. So if you're able to prevent that person from dying within that dimensional space, at the same time, you're definitely going to heal that person up. So he would definitely be able to survive that kind of fatal damage. So this is also a very, very strong skill. So I definitely recommend you try to uh, get Hypnos close to at least level 30. All right, now we move on to Constellation. Constellation, I believe, yeah, so it only affects the looping skill. So the one which I said kind of double-edged sword, the one heals the single ally by putting them into sleep. When you have constellation up to 3 stars, what's going to do is that the healing is also going to apply to you, which is nice, right? You have a bit of self-sustain, but 9 out of 9 is really what's kind of going to break it. Is that because all of the other effects are also going to take place on Hypno. So that's the shield and also the Cosmo game. Now, Hypno's already mentioned his ultimate is super, super strong. So therefore, if you're able to increase your Cosmo quicker, much quicker, and therefore ready to release your ultimate again very quickly, that's going to be really suppressive. And that's why I think 9 out of 9 is also a massive power jump for Hypnos. All right, now let's move on to some formation ideas for Hypnos and how you may want to play him. I don't have Hypnos myself, so I'm going to represent him by Pandora, who's also a dark support character, etc. Now, I already mentioned for Hypnos, you generally want to play him up front so that he takes the most amount of normal attacks hits early on and therefore reduce the enemy's attacking speed. So that kind of gives you a huge advantage, etc. So for that reason, you normally want to place him up front, and on the left hand side is generally better, so he is in the range of 3 enemies. Now, I already mentioned because he is not a proper tank, so you do want other ways of trying to somehow protect your front row, right? And the obvious choice is going to be Seahorse Blind and also probably Chameleon June. Both of them is able to protect your front row, so that works really well with what Hypnos is trying to do. At the same time, both characters kind of slow down the pace of the game. So once again, that's in line with what Hypnos game tactic is, which is kind of slowing down, kind of doing more controls, that kind of thing. So this once again is really good synergy. The other character which have really good synergy with Hypnos is going to be Sorrento. Sorrento is very deadly with Hypnos because Hypnos ultimate is going to prevent the enemy releasing any looping skill. What Sorrento's ultimate is able to do is the enemy is not able to release any ultimate. So if you happen to have Sorrento and also Hypnos on the same team together, this is going to be a super, super suppressive team where you would kind of prevent the enemy doing loads of different things. But they can't really release any looping skill when Hypnos have that space, and they can't release any ultimate if Sorrento happen to release an ultimate. And both of them have a way of kind of increasing Cosmo gain, and also Chameleon June can increase Cosmo as well. This is going to be a super, super suppressive team. So that's definitely a really good combination. As for the last remaining slot, you can go for someone like Casino God Close, I guess. If you do have a Casino God Close, I'm just think where would you want to place? No, I think God Close should still stay at. back because you still want Hypnos effect to, I think it's still a bit more powerful than a Synagogue. But you can potentially swap them around. Like, it's your own personal choice. I would probably go with Hypnos up front, a Synagogue at the back. But if you need that bit of extra build, you can also swap it around. But anyway, I think that Gold is also going to be a really good compliment here because once again, she's going to put up loads of shield consistently, so that helps to protect your Hypnos when Hypnos is up front. Second thing it's going to do is also going to increase cost more for your team. Once again, the whole idea behind this team is a massive suppressive control, relying on Hypnos and also Sorrento's ultimate. So if you can get Cosmo gain quicker and release ultimate more frequently, that's going to be really strong here. So I think the gold class is really good shout. The other one I think is more for fun. I'm not sure how well it's going to work out in reality, but I think it could be a really fun one to create to make. It's actually going to be a Chris Hugo because a Chris Hugo actually have this ability that when he releases his ultimate, if the enemy have less than 35% of HP, I believe, then the enemy is not able to, it's just kind of frozen and not able to do anything until their HP goes back up. Saranto has a way of reducing the enemy's gaining HP once their HP falls below a certain threshold with his looping skill. And also remember Hypnos, what he's going to do with his ultimate is going to mark the enemy. So let's say if you are entering his ultimate with less than 35% HP already, even if for whatever reason the enemy meant to get their HP back up, by the end of the ultimate, they're going to be reverted back to less than 35% HP, and therefore will be frozen again. So I think this could be a really fun formation to play. Not sure how well it will actually do competitively, but I think it just certainly does play around with that kind of like internal freeze below a HP threshold a bit more. So potentially it could be a quite fun formation to try out. Alright, so finally let's wrap up this video with should we put on Hypno. So Hypnos is a very strong character. I think you can already tell with his very different skills. He's a more defensive oriented character. So for example, if you want to do really well in PvP defense or in kind of guild war defenses, etc., I think he will be really strong. He is going to be good in both PvP and also PvE, mainly because of his opening skill. Right, the fact that you're able to reduce enemies' attacking speed and Cosmo at the start of battle, that's extremely useful ability in both PvP and PvE, especially in PvE in some sense actually, because the enemy do so high amount of damage that they can kill you with normal attack. So this is going to be massive in PvE in story maps. So that's why he's just a really good character overall. Now, in terms of whether you actually want to pull him or not, I think it comes down to two factors. One is how much do you want a dark character? Because out of all the dark characters that's in the game right now, probably the best one so far is either going to be Hypnos or Pandora. Pandora is actually a bit more offensive oriented, really good in story maps, but really fragile, etc. Whereas Hypnos is probably going to see more plays in defensive in PvP, etc. So if you want a dark character for PvP, etc., then I think Hypnos is like one of the best choices. Like even in the Chinese game right now, in the Chinese version, out of all the dark characters, Hypnos is probably still gonna be the top one or maybe top two most played characters in PvP for within the dark elements. So that just shows how strong he really is. So you definitely want to consider that. The other thing to consider is out of all of the light and dark characters that has been released or about to release, where exactly do you value of them? Now, I know a lot of people have either pulled on Athena God Clothes or are saving up for Seiya God Clothes. So if you fall in one of those buckets, you probably shouldn't pull on Hypnos because if you're already starting on Athena God Clothes, then you might as well finish her up. Or if you're saving up on God Clothes Seiya, then you may still have a long wait, but who knows, right? You don't want to risk it, but that's fine. Would say that in the second portion, if you're waiting for Goku Seiya, well, you want to play Hypnos, I will probably still advise not pull on him right now. All of the Light and Dark characters, they normally come back in 3 banners, and even if you want to do the event where you try to get extra rewards by leveling him up as much as possible within the first 60 days. Normally, the second banner is going to happen within those 60 days anyway. So I definitely don't normally advise pulling out any characters within their first banner anyway. You can always wait for one extra banner to see out of the two characters which one do you prefer. So that's probably going to be my advice on Hypnos. I'm also going to make a brief comment on Goku Seiya, which is that Goku Seiya is really, really strong because he has this ability that at the start of battle, he's going to enter duel with one character, one enemy, and within that attack, they are just only going to attack each other. And a lot of time, this first of all breaks the enemy's opening skill, and second of all, you most of the time, Goku Seiya is actually going to come out of that battle winning because he is going to get extra buffs in that duel. Now, Hypnos, however, is almost a counter to Go Closeya because even though he do have an opening skill, so you can think that Go Closeya is able to break his opening skill, which is true. However, his trigger skill is basically gonna make the Go Closeya significantly reduce attacking speed and Cosmo, and when they're entering that duel, Goku says is going to hit you massive loads of times. So even though Hypnos is going to lose his opening skill, however, he has his trigger skill, which would actually allow him to potentially come out of that duel winning or having an edge over Goku Seiya. And if Goku Seiya doesn't actually target Hypnos, then your Hypnos opening skill is actually going to be activated. And that's going to be beneficial to your entire team. So Hypnos is actually a really good counter to Goku Seiya. So for those of you who are saving up for Goku Seiya, unfortunately the counter has already been released. So just bear that in mind when you're deciding whether you still want to save for Seiya or not, or do you just want to maybe put on a signal Goku or put on Hypnos first.